Hi, my name is Rosa Hart, otherwise known on social media as @Nurse Rosa Speaks. And today I will be having a conversation with my friend, Dr. Rachel Malloy. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you for having me, Rosa.
I love spending time with you. You are such an inspiring person. So you are a nurse, first
I
and
am.
foremost, right?
Yes.
So why do I introduce you as Dr. Rachel Malloy? Tell me your education background real quick.
Silly. I went back to school as an adult, older in my years, but I did go back to school and get my doctorate of nursing practice and just graduated actually in August of 2023. Relatively new to the doctor title. Prior to that, I had a master's degree in nursing education. And of course, I started with my BSN back in the 1990s, many years ago.
Well, you are definitely an expert in educating people. You educate people full time, right?
I do. I work in medical device. I'm the clinical application manager for a neurodiagnostic company. And I manage a team of nurses that travel around the country and teach other people how to care for brain injured patients.
And that is such necessary work. And I'm so thankful for people like you doing that education. So you and I met because of the results of your DNP project, right?
Correct. Yes.
So
A
can you
colleague
tell us about that?
introduced, sure. Yeah, sure. A colleague introduced the two of us, and we both know, introduced the two of us. I was a non-traditional student really in my DNP program because I am not in advanced practice or APRN. And because I work in industry and not a clinical setting, it was my path for a DNP project was a little bit different than most. I was very fortunate to go to a academic center, Wake Forest. I'll give them a little plug. Wake Forest School of Medicine Nursing Academic Program that allowed someone like me to go back to school to get my DNP. So I ended up doing a project development project for my DNP, and I developed a media competency training program specifically for neuroscience nurses because I was on the board of the American Association of Neuroscience Nurses a while back. It was on our strategic plan after the Woodhull study revisited came out in 2017. We talked about it as a group and we thought, there's really an opportunity as an association to bring nurses in the forefront and do media engagement to improve public health and you really elevate nurses in the public eye. And so the problem is that that's easy to say, but you got to learn. And as nurses, we're lifetime learners. So there needed to be a training program developed. So I did that.
So did you take somebody else's media training course and like kind of reroute it to be for nurses, or how did that work? What was your process?
I did not. In 2022, there was a Delphi study that was published in Nursing Outlook, and it was on the 10 media competencies specifically for nurses that nurses need to be involved with media engagement. And so I used those 10 media competencies um, as my foundation for the program. And I took those 10 competencies and I divided them up kind of in groupings. So created 3 chapters out of them and then developed the content around that based off of science, what's in the literature. And then there was some information that I got from reading about media engagement and different ways to prepare for interviews and things like that. Like I didn't make that up. I got that from people who specialized in that, but I didn't take their program and turn it into mine. I just used cues and really made it specific for nurses so that it would resonate with them, how they could use media engagement.
So I'm looking at the Delphi study, 10 competencies here. And I think it is really important because there's so much in the media and especially on social media that is unreliable, and people don't know how to believe it, right? They don't know if they can believe what they're seeing on social media or even in the traditional news media. or as they like to call it, earned media.
That's
I
true.
actually taught a stroke awareness class today to some members of the community, and this older lady came up to me and asked, she had read something on Facebook earlier today, and she was asking me if it was really true and why I didn't mention what such and such drug was. And I never heard of it, so I looked it up, and turns out it was not real. It was a fabricated story. Nothing about it was true. And, she was so frustrated because they were using an association with a doctor that she trusted. But he didn't actually have anything to do with it either. It was fabricated about him. And so it is so important to know who to trust. And I think one of the things you emphasize very effectively is, nurses are the most trusted profession. As much as media will call on physicians to speak to certain things as experts, we're still somehow the most trusted profession as nurses. So I don't know why we don't get called on more. But since you've been doing this, have you done many appearances in the media?
I have not. It's not that I'm not willing to put myself out there, but I've really been concentrating on getting the media training out to people. Um, I'm happy to do this type of thing. I mean, we're getting an opportunity here to be on a
Yeah.
podcast, and I'll tell you a little stories. Back during COVID, when vaccines were first released, and I live in Florida, so take that for what that is. But when vaccines were first being released, I had said something on one of our state representatives' posts about I would be willing to help give vaccines, right? I mean, um, I felt strongly about that. If they needed additional nurses, we don't want to pull nurses from the hospital bedside at that time, to help get the vaccines out. And I had a reporter reach out to me and say, would you just videotape yourself like 30 seconds saying why you would be willing to do that? And I declined. I did write up a little thing. I'm like, here's my thoughts about it. You're welcome to use that. But I declined making that video. And I'll tell you the number one reason why I declined doing it was
Yeah.
because
Why?
I declined doing it because I didn't know, I hadn't had any training. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know I didn't know how to do it, right? And I didn't want to be on the news looking like an idiot. So, and this was before I created a media training program, right? So that
Mhm.
was, another thing that sat with me, and I know how to do it now. Like if someone asked me to do that today, and it's something I felt strongly about, I would totally do it. Now, at the same time, if they came and they asked me, Rachel, would you give an interview or would you talk to us about, kidney disease? I would decline because I'm not a kidney nurse. Like that, nephrology is not
Mhm.
my specialty. But if it was neuro related and something I felt that I could chew the public in a positive way, then I would totally do that.
Yeah, and I think that's important to focus on our expertise, right? I've been fortunate enough to get to go on television and on radio a couple different times, and I was not afraid to do that. Mostly, I'm I love being in the media, but I wouldn't want to get on there and talk about something I didn't know because I don't want to, be disingenuous or give bad information.
Yeah.
But we went in with the whole, I get to talk about be fast, know the signs of stroke, and when to call
Yeah.
911. Guess what I talk about in my job to my patients all day, every day? Be
Yeah.
fast. And so I could get on any form of media and just focus on that.
Yep.
And anything they ask me about, if I'm not an expert in it, or I'm not comfortable commenting on that because I might know, but I'm not sure about it, I can just be like, I'm here to focus on this today. I know be fast. I can tell you what it means. I can elaborate on it and give descriptors. And so having that focus and a topic, I think you're right, is really important. And when you spoke in March at the annual meeting for the AANN, you gave a really good demonstration video of just exactly that, how you created as part of your course example recordings of interviews where a reporter might ask you something totally unrelated and also highly controversial to try to trap
Yep.
you into saying something that would be inflammatory in some way. And you gave a great demonstration of how to just pivot away from that and back to exactly what you are there to talk about, focus on it, and not stir up trouble that you're not there to step in.
And Rosa, that's a really good point because I think that people are, there's like a stigma around media. Like when you say media, like what does that even mean? And media can come in different forms, but journalists want to use nurses. They want to use nurses as a source. They just don't know where to find them. Like, well, they know they're in
Right.
the hospitals, but where do they find a nurse to give them, to talk about a specific story, because journalists are not as interested in, this is my understanding, journalists are not as interested in nursing stories. They're interested in the nurse's perspective on healthcare stories. And that's super important. Like they want to get our message out there. So I don't think journalists, they want to develop relationship with media trained nurses so that they can continue to use them as a source. So those gotcha moments are not something that would be a common thing to happen
Yeah.
in those circumstances. But it's a good point to bring up. It's really about developing a relationship. And I think if nurses really keep in mind that they are literally doing what they need to do in the media, they do it every single day at the bedside. And it's just taking that education at the bedside and taking it out to the public in a different way. And that can be in the form of writing, like an op-ed or a letter to
Yeah.
the editor. It can be social media, like creating a healthcare social media post. It could be develop relationships with journalists and doing interviews, those types of things. There's lots of forms of media out there. So you don't have to get, pigeonholed into thinking that it's just one thing or the other. And you can create it yourself. You can have your media plan be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think demystifying it and making media more accessible to us is really important. As nurses, I think if we didn't overthink things before nursing school, we 100% didn't graduate unless we learned to.
Yes,
So,
true.
so I think something that I've been witnessing a lot um, since I've been learning about using social media for public health messaging, and since I've been using podcasting for increasing education for the community at large, I've been attending these nursing conferences with a different perspective than I had before. In the years before, I, was very interested in learning the content of what was being talked about in the different sessions. And now, since it's a lot of like more into updates of what I learned initially, I've been thinking more about how to share that information and how to get it out to more nurses that can't go to conferences, right? Or the public with our public health messaging. And at these conferences, you've got experts like yourself and the other board members who are creating great content and putting it on your website. Or, for example, the CDC or the World Stroke Organization. They have great websites that have information that professionals cite in their PowerPoints and in their papers all over the place. But how is the public going to get that messaging?
Yeah.
Either through the traditional earned media, as they say, or social media. And one thing that I kept hearing in so many different rooms was, well, how do we know that the messaging on social media is valid? And I got so frustrated listening to it because I felt like they were asking the wrong question. They're like, we have these great websites with all this validated information that we know is right, but nobody looks at that. And so I really just want to stand up in every room and holler out to everybody, take your information from your validated website that you're 100% confident in and put it on social media yourself. And that can sound really scary to someone who doesn't use social media. But if you use it enough to scroll, I mean, you can learn to post or share what is being posted by your trusted friend. Like, Rachel, if you post something about educating someone on traumatic brain injury, I'm going to share it because I'm going to know that you are a solid source and you got your information from a good place. And so we have that trust factor, right? So if nurses who are the trusted people can make sure that we are putting out the good messages out there that other people can share and that can reach a broader audience, I think it could go a really long way. But that information has to be repackaged for social media in a way that people can access it. And I know that's not the main focus of your course because you focus a
Well,
lot more on written and traditional media, right?
I mean, you can, the media skills are very similar no matter what the platform is. I think that that's the most important takeaway there is it's really about effective communication. But it's also really important to know that what our public health, what the people in the community need to know about helping them have, better health is the basic stuff, right? It's the things that we don't think twice about as nurses because we just live
Right.
and breathe it every single day. But being able to put the information out with therapeutic language that is digestible to the
Yes.
public is super important. Maybe it's as simple as making a healthcare post about traumatic brain injury, right? Number one cause of traumatic brain injury is falls. That mostly happens in the elderly population. One way to prevent that is making sure that their homes or their walkways through their homes are decluttered, that they've got grab bars, basic things like that. That's a simple skill. And somebody out there is thinking, oh my gosh, my mom and dad are getting older. I'm really worried that they're going to fall. What can I do to help them? And that's a simple message that we could put out there, something like
That's
that.
right.
And there's lots more of those, right? There's so many examples of basic knowledge that we could really be helping our communities. And the other thing that I would say about that is it's really important that we keep our messaging, that we're culturally conscious about that. Like if there are underserved communities that have a higher risk factor of non-modifiable risk factors, then we should try to find out what is the best media source for them and then go
Yes.
to where they are, meet them where
Mm-hmm.
they are and get that message out there because social
Yes.
determinants of health is a real thing, and making sure that we're conscientious of that and speaking to those people, casting a wide net, I think
Yeah.
is super important.
And that's a great point. We got to go where the people are so that they can receive the message that we're trying to give them. So I really love your very comprehensive approach to media training. But also I think there are a lot of people who are good at I'm on social media a lot, so I keep referring to that. Um, I think there are a lot of people who are good at social media who are not necessarily as good at focusing on what their message is, right? And so I think that's a good aspect of what you are bringing is that focusing on the message. What were you saying? Have like 3 message points that you
Mhm.
refer back to a lot because that repetition helps, and then you don't get lost on rabbit trails.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's really important when you're being interviewed or when you're putting your media messaging together that you have your key points and you stick with them. You can say them in different ways, you can use different verbiage, but the key messages really need to stay the same over and over again. And yeah, don't get lost down the trail. Turned
Right.
around. And you brought up a good point around social media and your story about educating and getting that question from the lady at the stroke event. We wonder how credible or how trusted are our media sources, and there's a difference between credible and trusted. Like during COVID, the CDC, we know that CDC is it's a credible source of
Yeah.
information, but during the COVID pandemic, a lot of people lost trust in the CDC. I mean, the trust in the
Yeah.
CDC declined like 10%. And so,
Yep.
I think understanding the difference between credible and trusted is important. So as a nurse, I know that I'm part of the most trusted profession, and I'm going to keep my integrity and make sure that any messaging I put out on healthcare is trusted, or trustworthy. So I need to make sure that I get that message out on a credible source.
Well, and then you are the credible source, and so you don't want to violate
Well, I
the
mean,
trust of that, and you want to keep your fidelity. Nursing fidelity is something that I feel like is really drummed into us. It was to me in nursing school, that ethically we have a lot of responsibility to fidelity, doing what we say we're going to do. It might be, I'm going to bring you a cup of ice. Well, if you don't bring them that cup of ice, why would they believe anything else you're going to say? Right. So we have a lot of responsibility to maintain that trust, by, like you said, making sure we stay credible and not violate that trust.
Yep. And make sure that your media messaging is through a credible source. Yeah, for sure.
So, well, what do you mean by that? Because like Facebook, I wouldn't say in and of itself is a credible source, but it is the source that a lot of people are going to get their news from. They're going to get their health messaging from, whether we like it or not. So, so what do you mean make sure that we put our message out there through a credible source?
Right. Well, so I think this is a really good opportunity for nursing associations to use media trained nurses to inform and educate on whatever their specialty is, and then share those messages through a credible source like their nursing association website, their social media post, those kinds of things, right? Yeah.
So the credible source would be the AANN Facebook page, for example. Okay, just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, and I feel like I think that's the bigger thing for me. I mean, I'm all about nurses finding their individual media engagement plan, but I feel like the bigger miss, especially if we want to try to move the needle with nursing and the profession of nursing, the perception of nursing by the public. I think if we're going to move that needle faster or further, the way to do that is through media engagement, through professional nursing associations and healthcare organizations. When you, Rosa, do your podcast on Stronger After Stroke for Norton Health, people are looking at you as a trusted source, and through that, your healthcare system is automatically attributed because they're using you as an expert. That's huge. And I think if nursing associations did that across the board, whether it was state nursing associations, specialty nursing associations, not just neuroscience nursing, but there's so many different specialties out there. And if they used media engagement, if they had the training for their people and they had a select group or however they wanted to do it, had nurses that could speak on their expertise publicly, right? Then their association would automatically be attributed as that credible source behind it. And it's going to move mountains. I just firmly believe that. I really, really, really do. I mean, I'm all in.
I know. I totally am as well. And so I really feel like I've met a kindred spirit in you. And I think what you're describing is what people in marketing would call developing brand authority and being seen as the person with the answers, right? So in this case, for example, the American Association of Neuroscience Nurses would be the source of neuro expertise because they have these experts that you can go to and call on when you have these questions. They're like, oh, I bet the AANN knows of a nurse who would speak to the media or write this op-ed. So yeah, I think that's going to be huge for building brand authority for these. I know it makes some sound like they're companies, but I mean, that's how the marketing works. And if as nurses, we don't get taught about business. We don't get taught about marketing in nursing school.
It's a good point though. I took the because when I originally developed the program I developed for neuroscience nursing, my school was very interested in it. So once I graduated, I quickly turned it into a general nursing, any non-specific nursing, like any nurse could go through all of the examples and illustrations throughout the program. They would resonate with them because it's all kinds of nursing. And then started teaching it as part of advocacy in the DNP program. And it's been really interesting to watch those nurses do it. They all are kind of like, I don't know. But at the end, and I've had several of them reach out to me afterwards and goes, oh my goodness, Dr. Malloy, you're not going to believe I've been asked to be on a radio podcast. I'm so excited for this, and now I feel like I can do it. So, that means a lot too. So I think there's a place for it in academia also, but there just aren't that many training programs available specifically for nursing and media training.
Yeah.
I'd really like to destigmatize that. I'd really like to normalize the idea of nurses being used and experts to share their perspective of healthcare stories. And I honestly believe that the healthcare story is not complete without the nurse's voice.
Definitely. In my 100% biased opinion, I agree with you. So one thing that I know you and I are really passionate about is advocacy, both for our individual patients, as well as on the public health front in politics, if we need to vote or if we need to talk to our legislators or sign a petition or whatever we need to do to advocate for an issue that affects the public health. So one thing that you and I were talking about the other day was that study that was done by the American Nurses Foundation, I think, where they looked at what the philanthropy side of things, the money was being donated to, and the money being donated to make healthcare better, like 1 penny of every dollar was donated towards nursing, be that nursing education or whatever. So that's like a very small amount, and it's about, I think they said $1 billion. So if you had one additional $1 billion, that would just be 2 pennies of every dollar would be attributed to nursing. So, as you're thinking about advocacy and getting nurses in the media, if you had rewarded a grant of $1 billion to do something to transform healthcare, what would you do as a nurse? What needs do you see that you would want to use it to meet?
Gosh, it's such a big question. And I'd love to say, there's so many things I would love to say, but this is what I'm going to say.
Okay.
I firmly believe that one of the problems with nursing is that we are undervalued. And I don't say that lightly. It weighs heavy on me to even put that out in the universe. But it has to change, right? We have to get into a place where we have more value in the public eye, which is why I can do my small part with my nurses in the media training. I mean, that feels within my grasp. But if I had $1 billion with a B, I think the best use of that would be to support nursing or support nurses in running for public office. I think that a lot of the changes that need to be made to make healthcare more accessible and affordable with better outcomes needs to happen at a legislative level. And that's going to require people that have, walked the halls of the hospital and been at the bedside, that really understand what it means to take care of patients like that 24/7. So I think I'd have to sink it into supporting nurses running for legislature. And there's organizations that help with that, right? That have training and things like that. Like Healing Politics is one of those. But that's what I would do.
So would you be like the founder of the nursing super PAC?
I don't know. I don't even know if I'd want that title.
I know, right?
I don't know
Well,
if
you
I'd
could
want
be,
that title, but
you'd probably want to be the anonymous founder
yeah.
of the nursing super PAC.
It's not me. It's 100% not me, but there are enthusiastic young people that really are ready to engage at that level, at that civic level, and we need to get the nurses there, and it makes sense for them to be there. We're trusted.
It, right? I mean, that's what we keep coming back to. It's like, y'all trust us, but you don't want to pay us or put us in positions of power. So, one thing I saw from one of my favorite accounts that I follow on social media, Citizen Nurse. If you are not
Yes.
following Citizen Nurse, everybody who's listening to this, go do it right now, because every day she posts something on TikTok or on
Yep.
Instagram that is just like a little blurb that educates you on how government even works, and
Yep.
why you should care, and what you can do about it. And so that's highly educational. But one thing she posted was this video of Daniel Craig strutting his stuff. And it was like, the nurses found out they don't need permission to enter the chat. And then they're like, what chat is the nurse entering? And it says, all the chats. And I just love that so much, because the thing is, like, we all have, you and I are both in neuro specialty, but there's a different specialty for every body part and then some. Um, and we all have different experiences to pull from, and we see different needs that need to be met. And there's just so much room for nurses with our experience to contribute to the conversation, to make our voices heard.
Mm-hmm.
To advocate for others, which is something nurses are really good at. We're so good
Mm-hmm.
at, like, not taking care of ourselves in order to help other people. And so, I mean, what else is advocacy?
Yeah,
It's
we
speaking up for
advocate every
somebody.
single day. Nurses
Yeah.
advocate every single day. They don't even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to have this conversation with you, Rosa, because
Yeah.
nurses in the media is very dear and to my heart, and I do believe that it is a way that nurses can advocate on a bigger level,
Mm-hmm.
and journalists want us to do it. They want to communicate with
Yeah.
us, but we just need to get those nurses trained up, and we need to get associations engaged with creating media engagement programs for the members of their board of directors or their advocacy committees and things like that, all of them. And they're welcome to reach out to me. I'll just give my little plug right here. I do have my
Yes.
own, like my own little LLC, Nurse Malloy. And
Okay.
yeah, thank you. And my website is Nurses in the Media. In the is in this title, nursesinthemedia.com. And I'm happy to hear from you. If you are if you are in a nursing association or in academia, or if you are in a healthcare organization and you want to bring media training to your people, I'm here for you. I've got a program. I can make the program specialized to your specialty. So I can create it so that it's, specific to whatever that specialty is. And I'm happy to do workshops or speaking engagements or whatever needs to happen to help move the needle forward here with Nurses in the Media.
And if you can't tell from this podcast, she's a very engaging speaker and would be definitely helpful to have on your agenda for your next conference if you need to pull her in there. She's a great speaker. So I was wanting to say, gosh, it totally left my head.
You think
That's
about
okay. I
that
can
for a
edit it.
second, because I have been doing some speaking engagements. You're probably going to ask me about that. That's probably what you were
Yes,
thinking. So I
it
have
is.
been doing some speaking engagements. Spoken for some major healthcare organizations. So that's been really exciting at their conferences. I just came back from Toronto, where I spoke at the Canadian Association of Neuroscience Nurses Conference, and that was a blast. A really, really great group of people there. I'll be speaking on Nurses in the Media in Australia actually in 2025. So it's a ways off at the World Federation of Neuroscience Nurses.
Yay.
Going international here, but love to keep it close to home and just to empower some nursing about leadership, what the next steps are in leadership. And that's really learning how to construct an effective message and developing a media plan that is appropriate for you or for your association or for your organization.
Yeah, and so many of these associations have certifications like through the AN, I am SCRN certified, which is for stroke care. And I did not expect it, but after I had that push that certification and finished the test and passed, I was like, oh, maybe I do know a little bit of what I'm talking about. Or, it made me feel more competent, which gave me confidence to do a lot more as a stroke nurse, right? So I see your nurses in media training program as a similar way to just empower people to say, I took this course, so I must be prepared. Like, what else could I do to be prepared but do it? And so I really appreciate you offering this, because sometimes people feel like they need permission. And so I feel like by taking this class, it's kind of like helping people give themselves permission to put themselves out there and share the expertise that they may have 20 letters behind their name, but your course might be what actually gives them that permission in their mind to actually put it out there into the
Take it a
world.
different step. Yeah, 100%. And I get that feedback, which is, I mean, it's just incredible to open up my email and and have an email in there from someone who had participated in the course and said, just I took your course and then out of the blue I got asked to do this. Like the universe is taking care of this stuff, and I felt prepared. Like I felt prepared. It was amazing. And so that when that happens, that's like the icing on the cake to me, because it's all I really want is to help others feel confident, to advocate in a different way.
Well, thank you for your service. I think you're doing it. So,
Thanks.
if you are interested in contacting Dr. Rachel Malloy, find her at nursesinthemedia.com, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you can follow me on social media at Nurse Rosa Speaks. And you can follow this podcast, which is Nurse Rosa's Insights, for more interviews with other people who are passionate about transforming healthcare through nurses taking leadership, as well as other disciplines. So if you are in the medical field space as not necessarily a provider, but I love doctors and I'm happy to talk to them too. Or respiratory therapists, or just anybody who has some really good ideas for how they figure they can make things better. I want to meet you and I want to talk to you about it, because I love talking to people who care and who have ideas on how to make things better and are possibility thinkers, as I like to call it.
There you go.
Thank you for listening today, and stay tuned for the next episode. Bye.